Support for Lab Out Loud is provided by the National Science Teachers Association. Find out more at nsta.org. Welcome to the Lab Out Loud podcast, science for the classroom and beyond. Today we're going to be talking about Generation Beyond, a tool that'll get our kids even more interested in space travel.
It's a tool that can be used to excite boys and girls of the middle school age that we're targeting to just look a little bit further at any different area of science and technology and engineering and math to start getting them excited at that age. And we just have this huge foundation of resources from so many years of exploration, and we're trying to bring that to use that in a way that makes it easy for teachers to use.
That's coming up next, but first, this is Lab Out Loud, and I'm your co-host, Dale Basler.
And I'm Brian Bartell. So it's an interesting story here. You'll like this. I often run the computer for swim meets.
Yeah.
And they collect the times from a console that collects them from the touchpads. And there's an announcer too. Well, the announcer didn't show up. So I'm running the computer, and I said, I'll do the announcing part of it. And I got started with it. And so I'm announcing, and I have a background in swimming. I did some coaching for a little bit too. And so I know what's going on. And the person running the console is like, wow, you have like a voice for radio. Like I want to hear you like on NPR or something, like with a radio show.
Oh, that's so funny.
I'm like, well,
come to think of it,
on my radio voice.
How would you like to listen to 151 episode? Well, 151 plus the 52 we did for.
Exactly. Yeah. We're over 200 technically, and 10 years.
We've done a lot of episodes, but and we kind of keep a list of things that we want to get on the show. And for a long time, I have wanted to get an astronaut. And Brian, by a stroke of genius, has pulled it off.
I finally got you an astronaut.
I know. I'm so excited.
Our astronaut is Stephen Frick. He's a former NASA astronaut. He's the Director of Strategic Planning and Operations at Lockheed Martin Space Systems Advanced Technology Center. In any case, though, Lockheed Martin has partnered with Discovery Education to produce something called Generation Beyond.
As a matter of fact, one of the resources we talked about in the show has actually passed. It's a virtual field trip, but for our listeners who listen deep into the catalog, you can still go and see it. It'll be linked at our website. It's archived, and it's really good. So
Stephen's going to tell us a little bit about Generation Beyond and all these opportunities.
And his time as an astronaut.
I'm Steve Frick. I'm a director at the Lockheed Martin Advanced Technology Center in Palo Alto, California. And what we are is basically the R&D lab for the Lockheed Martin Space Systems Company. So we try to come up with new innovations that Lockheed Martin can use in everything from our spacecraft that are taking people to low Earth orbit and beyond, to spacecraft that are exploring the solar system, to other applications across government and military. So it's an exciting place to be. I came here from NASA, where I was a NASA astronaut and a shuttle pilot and commander. So I've seen the human space flight side of it, and it's exciting now at Lockheed Martin to see all the other areas of space that our country participates in.
Well, we're excited to have an astronaut on the show. We've had Nobel Prize laureates. We've had even 2 nights on the show. But I think the number of people who have left low Earth orbit are probably smaller than both of those groups. So,
well, luckily it's getting bigger and bigger, and we're looking forward to the time when that's going to be numbered in the thousands and not in the hundreds.
That's true. So speaking of which, we came across a press release not too long ago, and it was titled, which really captured my imagination, "The world's first crew to Mars is likely in middle school right now." And so this is talking about something called Generation Beyond. It's a program, and it seeks to prepare future deep space explorers. So in that same kind of piece there, you're talking about maybe having people go into spaces.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what we think. We think when you look at when we're going to have people that are going to be going in the vicinity of Mars and landing on Mars, that's probably going to be in the early 2030s. And those folks are about that age now. They're in middle school. They're later parts of elementary school going into high school, and we think it's really important, not just for those lucky folks who are going to get to go into space and go to those amazing destinations, but really for the more important group that's going to develop the technology and build the vehicles and operate those vehicles from Earth that we need to get that done. Lockheed Martin has been doing this for many, many years, and so what we're trying to do is bring our experience from flying humans into space, from flying many missions to Mars and to the other planets, and bring some of the interesting aspects of those missions to our middle school, so you can see how cool space is, how amazing the challenges are that you have to overcome to be able to be successful in these missions, and do it in a way that can get young folks excited, not just about going into space, but about, hey, what does it take to get there? What aspects of science, of technology, of engineering, of math are required to get that job done? So we've tried to collect bits from all of our different areas of space exploration and put it in formats that teachers can use and parents can use to get their kids excited about the possibilities.
This is crazy. My kids are middle schoolers right now.
I was about to say,
like, I have 2 7th graders and a 9th grader. Like, this is like, oh, goodness. I was worried about them going to college. Way to go.
Yeah, I got one more thing to think about.
Well,
one of the challenges we want to do is we need these young men and women to get excited about these areas of STEM education so that they can make it not quite so risky. So we can send people to Mars with the confidence that they're going to be able to do the mission that we ask them. They're going to get the scientific discoveries that we would like to see out of that, and they're going to come home safely. It's not an easy thing, and we need them to start learning what they need to be ready for that now.
Sure. Well, you were a middle schooler at some point, and you went to space. What were you thinking in middle school? Were you thinking about these things?
I was excited both about space from a very young age, because a little bit before middle school, but I was quite young when we put the first people on the moon. So I saw that from the eyes of someone who was under 10 years old. But then when I was a little bit older than that, I got exposed to aviation, naval aviation specifically, when I would visit my grandparents down in Pensacola, Florida, and I just got really excited about both aviation and space. It led me to the Naval Academy and to being a naval aviator, which then finally gave me the opportunity to at least put in an application for NASA to be an astronaut, and I was just very lucky in my timing. So yeah, it goes back to an early age for me.
What new pathways do our young kids, my kids' age now, what pathways do they have?
Oh, think of the possibilities. They have so much more to look forward to than even our generation did. I mean, right now we have humans in orbit around the Earth, and we have continuously since about the year 2000. So we have people living and working in space 24/7, 365. We've already built and done one test flight on the Orion spacecraft, Lockheed Martin spacecraft for NASA, that is going to take the first people beyond low Earth orbit, initially to circumnavigate the moon, but the vehicle is designed to go much farther to take us to asteroids or Mars. So those are really the possibilities that kids that are in middle school now can look forward to. That's a much wider palette than what we saw when we were looking up at the sky at our age.
But now there's a timing issue here too, because in one breath I think, middle school students right now, and they are possibly the ones going to Mars, and that seems like a long ways away. But in another breath, I think, that's just in a few years out there. So, how do we know the timing of this is going to happen around that time?
Well, it's just when we look at the plans that are in place now, it's a huge undertaking to do any mission exploring the solar system, and whenever you put people in the mix, a human crew on board, it becomes a much bigger challenge. But we're already developing the tools that we need. I mentioned the Orion spacecraft, which has the critical aspect of being the spacecraft that will be able to get the human crew into orbit, and most importantly, bring them back home on reentry at the insane speeds that you come back from the moon or from Mars at. You need a really robust heat shield to be able to get through reentry and safely down to the surface.
I'm looking at the picture. It looks shiny right now.
It's a great looking spacecraft.
It does. It looks fantastic.
It does. It does. Good looking and performs well. They're building the large rocket that we'll need to be able to get these huge masses into orbit, to be able to get not just people, but the fuel you need and the supplies you need for these long missions. If you're going to go beyond low Earth orbit, if you're going to go to Mars, you're looking at a couple of year mission probably to get there, to spend significant time on the surface, and to get home. We have to build habitats that are going to be able to get a crew of a reasonable size safely to these long distances. and handle all the contingencies, protect you for radiation, store the food and water you need, all the supplies you need. So there are a lot of challenges, but we have a sense for how long that will take. It's really just a matter of the commitment of the society who want to do it. But there's enough people now that are excited about it that it's reasonable to say by the late 2020s we should be able to be close to Mars, and in the early 2030s we should be on the surface.
That's fascinating. How do we help our students get there? I know that the Generation Beyond is a piece of this, and what are some of the resources that you're developing to help our teachers out there?
Yeah, so Generation Beyond, there's a little something for everybody. If you're a middle school teacher and you're looking for content, you can just go to generationbeyondinschool.com, all one word, and there's everything from lesson plans to tons of background material. Basically, just plug and play. You can pull it out and use it. And what it draws from is experiences that we've had with various deep space missions, but putting in the context of the challenges that space flight brings up that you have to overcome. Things like the ridiculous temperatures, 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit when you come back on reentry, and how do you build something that will protect the astronauts as they come through that reentry? How do you target for going into just the right orbit around Mars when you get there, when it's an impossible distance away? Just the mathematics that's required to be able to navigate your spacecraft from the Earth to Mars and end up exactly where you expect to be. They talk about that and how that's been overcome in the past. All these interesting things about spaceflight that just make it seem incredibly difficult, but which we are able to overcome if we have folks that have the right background and get excited about the right STEM fields and prepare themselves to help us get there.
And there are some digital lesson plans to help teachers guide their classes through this?
Digital lesson plans, lesson materials, take-home materials for both students and parents. It's all there at generationbeyondinschool.com. You can pull it right down off the website. And there's a couple of events coming up too. Something that might happen just before this airs, but it's coming up soon on October 4th. There's a virtual field trip that's going to be filmed at our Lockheed Martin Space Operations Simulation Center in Waterton, Colorado. Really cool place. It's got essentially a huge open area with what looks like the surface of an asteroid at one end. It's got a large habitation mock-up in there. They're going to show some amazing advanced manufacturing, some
and
really cool
big
stuff.
3D printer, it sounds like.
Big 3D printer, but it prints metal, not just plastic. We're using that stuff right now at Lockheed Martin to build parts for real spacecraft.
It's interesting because and we talked about this before, but in science fiction that I'm reading now or even seeing, they talk about having 3D printers there, almost like the Star Trek Replicator, to basically make anything that we need in space, because obviously you can't manufacture it the way we could here on Earth. Is that a reality? Obviously, it's part of the area.
It's something we're working on. Yeah, we all dream about the Replicator. That was one of my favorite bits, other than warp drive, on the Enterprise. But of course, the reality is always more difficult.
Especially, it could make any food or drink you needed.
Earl Grey tea.
Good. Always good. Yeah, it's like Earl Grey hot. But we're trying. But of course, the reality is always more difficult. So there's a lot of problems to overcome. But we're doing a lot of development on 3D manufacturing on the ground, but there is work looking at doing it in space. Even as we speak now, NASA has a small 3D printer going on the space station looking at doing it in microgravity and some of the challenges or advantages that presents. And it's certainly going to be a part of any realistic Mars mission, because it's much easier if you can make your spare parts to order when something breaks on the way to Mars than to have to carry every conceivable part with you.
What about assembling like parts of crafts and things like that in space? That's a thing I've heard about before. Actually, where's that in the timeline? Assembly,
basically putting the craft together in orbit?
Yeah.
Well, we had 10 years of practice. We had 10 years of practice doing that with the International Space Station. Both of my shuttle missions were essentially assembling the space station. On my first mission in 2002, we brought up a large truss element, which was the backbone to all the solar arrays and thermal radiators that you see if you see a big picture of the space station. And that's a matter of bringing a big 30,000-pound piece that's almost 50 feet long up in the back of the space shuttle rendezvousing and docking with the space station, and then using a big crane to pull it out of the shuttle and attach it to the station and do a whole bunch of spacewalks to hook everything up.
Canadarm,
so
right?
that was exactly Canadarm was used to move it from the shuttle to the station. And on my second mission, we did the same thing, but with the laboratory. So, we've had from the time we started building the space station to when we got it complete about 2010, 10 years experience of building large structures in space, and we'll do something very similar, I'm sure, in whatever goes to Mars.
Okay.
What are your future plans for supporting these students as they age? They're in middle school now, foreseeably. Do you have a high school extension once they get into that level?
That's a great question. Right now, we're really focusing on the current generation beyond content, which is aimed at middle schoolers. But
and no parent can see into the future for high school anyway. They don't even. they have to address the middle school needs right now. I understand.
Yeah.
Sorry.
First things first, but we want to make sure we get this rolled out well for middle school. And honestly, I think that's a great age to target because I think it's just great if we can get to young men and women when they're that age, sixth to eighth grade. They're not sure really what they want to do, and they've still got a lot of years of school ahead of them. And if we can get them excited about STEM education or any field within that area at that age, it's gonna latch onto them, and they're going to get excited about it and want to learn more. But it is certainly reasonable to follow up with later curricula. Lockheed Martin has been really focused on STEM education for quite a while now. I think over the last 5 years, they've given something like $70 million worth of investment in STEM education, and I don't see that weakening. So I'm sure we're going to follow this up with materials for both older and younger students.
And it's not limited to, we always think about space as like in engineering and physics, but we have to take care of the biology side and all these other aspects. The whole plate of science is on the table, isn't it?
Oh, you're absolutely right. It's at Lockheed Martin, I think we have about 100,000 people worldwide. Probably 50,000 of those are scientists and engineers, and of course mainly in the areas that we need to produce aircraft and spacecraft and all of the different things that we build. But for spaceflight, you're right, the challenge is much broader. We need those mathematicians that can manage those incredibly complicated trajectories we need to get to our destination. We need the biologists and the biochemists to understand the effect that radiation and weightlessness have on the human body when you're in space for not just, a week or two, as I did on the space shuttle, but for months and years at a time. You need every aspect of science, technology, engineering, and math if you want to be successful in these incredibly ambitious missions.
There's even a spot for geology.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, they sent one geologist to the moon, and they trained, and they spent a lot of time training all the other astronauts to at least become amateur geologists, and that really paid off in a big way, because when you had the human on the surface of the moon able to see the rocks with their own eyes and make decisions in real time, you can accomplish things in a very short time that would be much more difficult with a robotic experience. So I can see them doing a very similar thing when we plan any Mars mission. In fact, my class this would have been back in the early 2000s, we didn't even have any planetary missions on the deck, but we went out to New Mexico and did about a week and a half geology field trip just to get the basics of it, to understand the challenges related to doing planetary geology if you were in a extraplanetary setting.
My mind is spinning because it's just a fascinating concept to think about doing this in the future, and that this is something we'll witness in our lifetime, and maybe we've had the Mars rovers as a success, but we haven't had that kind of like getting a mission to Mars would be something to maybe unite us all around it.
I've always been envious of people like you, Steve, who got to sit, inches away from the television and watch the moon landing, and you hear those stories, and it's like the closest I have is the Mars rovers, I feel. But I'm thirsty for more.
I agree. I was lucky, but I will tell you that the grainy pictures we saw coming off the Apollo landings, don't really compare to the amazing images that we've seen come off the Mars rovers. And I'm, my experience is in human spaceflight, but I've been incredibly excited and thrilled by what I've seen coming off of every generation of rover we've had there. And I think it's going to be very important that we learn and plan how to use both the robotic capability and the human capability together. I think that's going to be very important, and they're going to work best when they can work together, because robotic exploration could do things that humans just can't do, and they can go places that humans just can't go. So we're going to need to do it all together.
Well, plus that's going to be a need here on Earth too. I mean, I think that's an actuality that's already emerging. Humans working with robots.
Absolutely. Yeah. See, so you'd asked about what else other than the content that you can pull down off the website for lesson plans and lesson materials. We talked about the virtual field trip on October 4th.
Correct.
There's also the video challenge, which is going on right now. It opened on August 15th, but it's available through December 15th, and it's just a chance for small groups of students, anywhere from an individual up to 4 people, to just shoot a 1 to 2 minute video explaining, how would they design a living quarter for astronauts to get them from the Earth to Mars and back home again. Just 1 to 2 minutes to shoot it yourself, and it closes on December 15th, and there's a pretty good cash prize, about $10,000 for the winner.
And that's targeted to middle school also?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Yep, middle school.
Get your cameras ready, kids.
Get on my iPads and get going, kids.
I'm looking forward to seeing what their ideas are. It's so easy for us to get stuck in our mind of what we think a habitat should be like, but I want to see what those amazingly creative minds out there can come up with.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for your time, Steve. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And I mean, I've been clicking on some of the resources behind the scenes. There's a lot of fascinating stuff back there. I like the Generation Beyond in School, where it tells you space school is in session, and it's got the Orion spacecraft. It's just gorgeous. I mean, really some fascinating and fantastic content there that Lockheed Martin is sharing with us.
Well, I hope it gets used. I hope teachers will go and check it out and pull it down and use it in their classrooms. And I look forward to seeing what the students come up with in the video challenge. I look forward to having a chance to keep working this material and updating it and improving it as we see what works and as we get more information in from our current missions. It's only going to get better.
For links and other information related to this episode, visit laboutloud.com. You can send us your questions and comments at laboutloud.com/contact.
If you enjoyed the show, make sure you've subscribed on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, or your favorite podcasting platform. And if you really enjoyed it, consider leaving us a rating or a review. Your feedback helps others find our show.
Until next time, I'm Dale Basler.
And I'm Brian Bartell.